Hey friends, this is Carrie and welcome back to I Like Reddit channel. Today we have some stories out of the Entitled Parents subreddit. Let's begin. Our first story is posted by Vote Dog. EM tries to shove herself and a stroller onto a very full elevator. This was many years ago. I worked in a building with 20 plus stores and took the elevator every day. Something I hate is when people try and smush themselves into an elevator when it's already full. It happened constantly, and my claustrophobia would kick in a little, making for some really uncomfortable rides. As the years passed, I began to lose my patience with the entitled people I encountered on the elevator and began getting snarky. One day, I get to work and get on the elevator. There's barely any room, and briefly I think about getting off and taking another one when I see a woman with a stroller running in our direction. Of course, I'm gonna call her Karen. Karen had a big stroller with a toddler in it. In one hand she had a Starbucks cup, and in the other one she had a phone, which was pushed up against her ear. She was directing the stroller with her body and doing a crappy job of it. She's talking on the phone, totally oblivious to those around her, and heads towards us, clearly intent on taking our elevator up. I again take stock of the space and realize it's absurd of her to even try. The door starts to close, but Karen makes it just in time. She doesn't even look to see if there's enough room. She's so into her call that she's just shoving the stroller into the doorway and assuming everyone will just part and allow her. The problem is that I'm standing directly in front of her. The door reopens, but I stand still, blocking the entrance. She pushes the stroller so it taps my leg, but I don't budge. She finally looks up from her phone call. Me, smiling. Sorry, the elevator's full. Karen, I'm only going up 3 flights. Me, that doesn't change the fact that there's still no room for you and your stroller. A man who was on the elevator with me presses the door close button. Karen tells whoever she's on the phone with, "Hold on, I have something to deal with." Karen, there's plenty of room in there. Me, I think I can speak for the rest of us when I say, we don't want to be smashed up against the wall so that you can fit in here. Just take the next one. The door starts to close again, but she pushes the stroller in such a way so that it reopens. I hear the people behind me sigh. We're all going to be late because of this bench. I reached out with my foot and shoved the stroller back a few inches. I was nowhere near the little boy. Me, get your damn stroller out of the doorway. You were not the only person here. You see that, right? The rest of us need to get to work. Stop being selfish and entitled and find another elevator. Karen looks like she's been assaulted, standing there with her mouth agape. The man from before hits the door close button again. As the door slides close, I yell through the crack, "Have a nice day." Probably so many people in Karen's life that cater to her entitled and selfish behavior. She never actually has to stop and think about someone else other than herself or what she wants at the moment. Well, I'm glad OP put her in her place. Anyway, on to the next story. Our next story is posted by Octavia Blackthorn. Kid who's probably never heard no in his life. I was sitting in a local takeaway around lunchtime, waiting for my order when a mother and her son come in too. Her kid looks probably 5 or 6. She orders and sits down. The kid starts running in circles, yelling nonsense, and his mom is just staring at him, doing absolutely nothing. Soon the kid gets bored and goes behind the counter and comes right up next to the deep fryer. The woman cooking instantly tries to shoo the kid back into the dining section when the kid says no and tries to move closer to the hot and sharp things. The lady goes, "Ma'am, you need to get your son. He can't be back here." The mother says, "Oh, he's fine," in the most flippant tone ever. At this point, everyone in the shop is staring at with the most judgmental face, including me, and she doesn't move, so the cook starts shuffling the kid out from behind the counter, a hand on his back. That gets a reaction out of the mother. She stands up and screams, "Don't you touch my son! I'll call the police on you!" An elder man sitting close by says, "If you controlled your kid, she wouldn't have to." She grabs her kid and roughly spins him around, looking for support. She doesn't find any. She looks roughly at me and says, "Do you believe this? My son's a child. Doesn't yours act up occasionally?" I gave my 4-year-old, who was sitting next to me playing Candy Crush, a pointed look. Well, of course she has. She's 4. She has at least 10 tantrums a day, but I instead go, "No, my daughter has a little something called discipline. Perhaps you should try it." Well, then she tells me she feels sorry for my children and demands food beyond the house and free drinks for the disrespect that she's received since she's come in. She doesn't get what she wants, and declares that at least she knows where she will never eat again, and drags her kid out the door behind her. Why can't people just control their children? It's not hard. Hand them a phone and you'll be amazed at how quiet they can be. I think this Karen, much like many of the other Karens in the stories that we've seen on the subreddit, expects everybody else to watch and mind her children. It's everyone else's responsibility to watch her children, but God forbid they actually discipline them or say no to them, and then Karen gets all upset because Karen doesn't know boundaries and therefore she does not teach her child boundaries, which in the end does him no favors because society has boundaries and people by and large live by boundaries. And if she thinks it's perfectly okay to let her kids run wild, then so be it. The other thing I think is funny is when she threatens to never come back. I don't think that's a threat more so than a promise, because I think the restaurant would be thankful they wouldn't have to deal with a lawsuit because her kid gets hurt and Karen wasn't paying attention. Anyway, on to the next story. Our next story is posted by Kai's Mama, entitled Mom Parks on Our Grass. Recently, we moved from Missouri to Ohio for my husband's job. We moved during the summer and have children at 3 different schools, but all 3 schools use the intersection kitty corner to our house. My younger 2 go to primary school here, which is kindergarten through 2nd grade. Since the kids are so young, many parents walk their kids down, but some have recently started driving 2 blocks from their house to the bus stop. Well, there's one mom in a green Jeep that has made it a habit to park on our grass in the afternoon to wait for her child. I didn't make a big deal about it the first few times, but after a week of straight rain during the fall, her Jeep made huge muddy tire tracks in our grass. I'm talking 4-inch deep, huge marks where the Jeep was nearly stuck. She had to back up to get out after 5 minutes of letting the tires spin. The following day, I walked up to her Jeep and knocked on her window. I kindly asked her not to park on our grass anymore, especially when the ground was so wet, and pointed to the large tire marks. She gave me a really snotty look and rolled her window back up. I don't like confrontations. Was sort of relieved when the following day, a Friday, she parked elsewhere. Monday afternoon rolls around and I looked out my window and see that she's pulling up and see her look at my front porch, where I normally sit and wait for my kids. When she didn't see me sitting there, she peels onto my grass, onto the same tire tracks as before, and digs them in another 2 to 3 inches with mud flying everywhere. I was beyond livid, but I knew that it wasn't going to go anywhere if I tried talking with her again. So I made a beautiful, professional-looking sign and hung it up. The sign says, "Please do not park on our grass. Smile, you're on camera." So we don't have cameras that point that way, but we do have a Ring doorbell that doesn't even point that way, but she doesn't know that. She stopped parking there for 2 whole weeks until the rain and snow destroyed the sign. Today was the first day she decided to try parking there again, and I'm so happy she did. Right after her kid got into the car and went to take off, a police cruiser pulls up and cites her for parking too close to a stop sign. No, I didn't call them. It was completely coincidental. This is a typical Karen for you. Doesn't play by anybody's rules, doesn't respect anybody's stuff, but God forbid if something happened like this to her stuff, or to her lawn, she would be freaking out and losing her mind. It's a good thing that police officer was there to cite her for parking too close to a stop sign. I don't think she'll park there again, but you never know with Karens. They're not exactly the brightest people in the world. Anyway, on to the next story. If you're enjoying my content so far, please put some heart emojis in the comment section below. Our next story is posted by Psychospaz. My son needs to use the bathroom, now! A few days ago, I had the men's restroom blocked off where I work so that I could clean it. I had wipes, cleaner, a mop, and a bucket, the whole 9 yards, outside the door, and was putting on the gloves to go in and clean it, when a woman comes up with her son, who looks about 14 or 15. Her first words to me were, "My son needs to use the bathroom, now!" Quite forcefully. I tried to apologize and explain I needed to clean it before anybody could use it, but was cut off by her saying that they were in a hurry and telling her son just go in because I obviously haven't started yet. The kid says he's fine and that he could just go later, but she's not hearing either of us. So she walks around me and pushes open the door and gestures her son in, but freezes when she sees. An unfortunate guy had eaten something that gave him both explosive diarrhea and induced vomiting. It was such a mess that he was forced to call his wife and have her bring him a change of clothes because everything was soiled. And needless to say, the bathroom was a massive wreck. So there stands this lady staring at the vomit and crap-covered floor, speechless. All I said was, "Ma'am, I need to clean the restroom before anyone can use it." She left without another word. On to our final story. Our final story is by Basilica. I'm entitled to park in your driveway. My mother lives near Chicago, and I go home to visit her for Christmas about 7 years ago. Since I work from home anyway, network engineer, and long hours, and my uncle works from home a few miles away from my mother's, and I arranged to work out of his house because of the internet and it's quieter there. I arrive as a local elementary school is starting its chaos. I mention this to him and he goes into a frustrated vent. See, my uncle lives directly across the street from a new elementary school in a rapidly expanding, once small town with an influx of Chicago people moving in. Parents can't be bothered to walk their kids to school from a few blocks, nor use the circle drive like they should. No, they drive to school and park in the street/driveway of my uncle's house and his neighbors. Since my uncle works from home, this generally isn't a huge hassle, but on the rare occasion he wants to leave, he will find his car blocked because someone is parked in his driveway or on the street blocking his driveway. They had torn up grass by parking askew on the driveway/curb, damaging his mailbox multiple times. Worst of all, for anyone in the north, you understand this. They would drive across his driveway multiple times during the snow before it could be shoveled, causing hours of chipping and packing down the snow and ice off the driveway. All because they were entitled to park on our property. So I hear all this. It's winter, and at the time I was still a smoker. I parked my car in the middle of the street/curb, preventing the usual 2 cars from parking in front of his house, sheltering his mailbox. Next, I stand on the driveway, about a foot away from the sidewalk. Multiple cars pause, seem to think it over, and then drive several houses down and park, shooting me dirty looks from the opposite side of the street as they are forced to walk half a block to the elementary school. Again, I have no idea why they couldn't use the circle drive purposely intended for drop-offs. Day 2. I'm standing on the driveway like the entitled parent scarecrow, smoking, minding my own business, checking my email on my phone, etc. This older lady, and in fact, she could have been a grandmother because she seemed too old to have a kindergarten-age child, marches up to me and starts screaming in my face. How dare I block her from taking her precious child to school? She starts ranting and raving how I'm a punk kid and she's going to kick my butt, throwing in a couple of curse words for good measure. I blink and respond, "Why don't you watch your language? There are children present. I'm not blocking you in any way. I'm just preventing you from parking in my driveway. That does not belong to you." The entitled mother went as far as complaining to the school security, who came over for a chat with me. The school had been getting complaints nonstop from my uncle's neighbors about the issue. Parents had been told multiple times not to park at houses. He was very amused. The same mom attacks me 3 days later, calling me punk kid and yelling at me from preventing her from taking her precious child to school. I just stare at her levelly and don't respond. I go back inside and relay the story to my uncle, who is dying laughing. Mainly because at the time I had a 9 and 6-year-old children of my own. I was in fact not a punk kid, but a 33-year-old mother of 2. I suggested my uncle invest in one of those accordion-style anti-tire devices used by law enforcement and put them up and on his side of the sidewalk and wait for someone to pull into his driveway and flatten all their tires. He didn't think that was such a good idea, but I would have totally done it if it was my house. I'm surprised this Karen didn't call the police and try and get these people in trouble, though I think she knows, or at least knew, that what she was doing was trespassing. I find it amazing that she has the nerve to park in someone else's driveway and get angry about them basically telling her to scoot on out of there. Anyway, that's all the stories I have today. Please stop on by Reddit to show the OP some love and an upvote. Links to the original stories will be in the description box below. If you enjoy my content, please like and subscribe to my channel. Don't forget to hit the bell notification to let you know when I've uploaded new content. Thank you for watching and have a great day.